Broad topics, broad minds, broad hosts, but not just for broads. This is Broadscast with Goldman and Jackie MacDougall.
You're blowing out my eardrums this morning. Good morning, good afternoon.
Good
day,
sir. I said good day.
Anyway.
I always wanted to say that to a person. How are you?
I'm okay. Hi, welcome to Broadscast. I'm Kim Goldman, and you are?
I'm Jackie MacDougall.
Oh, you don't say it the same way I do.
Oh, you get today is St. Patrick's Day.
It is Jackie MacDougall.
Even though it's MacDougall, so my husband is Scottish.
Oh,
but I'm Irish, and you know the two of us. I don't need between the two of us. There's no green happening.
It is not, but I do have something on my Hearst chest that looks like a 4-leaf clover.
Oh.
I was looking for a T-shirt this morning.
It looks like it is a 4-leaf clover.
I was looking for a T-shirt this morning, and this is what I came across. So I decided to wear it.
We're redheads with freckles.
Yeah.
I think we're already
But
done.
I'm a Jew.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true.
I come from, Russia.
It's funny because, if anyone knows me, I have a daughter who is adopted from Taiwan. And so, she's not biologically Irish. You should have seen her this morning. Like, I don't think she could have gotten any more green. And she was so concerned about
green
the pinching.
too. Yeah. Oh, it's so funny.
She's like, I don't want to be pinched. So she had a green shirt, green pants.
The adults in us are all worried about the drinking. So
she actually
cute.
has green hair.
Oh, yeah.
But she's had that. That's not just a St. Patrick's Day. So
yeah.
Today on the show, very big show. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Soledad O'Brien will be here.
Woo woo.
She, as you all know, is a journalist, speaker, author, philanthropist.
All around badass broad.
Seriously.
Yeah.
She, there are certain people in the world when you think about like what is a broad, she found success, NBC, CNN, doing her thing, and she left and has control of her own destiny over there at Starfish Media, working with Hearst Television, matter of fact, with Soledad O'Brien. And I think that I can't wait to talk to her about
her pivot.
Her pivot.
Yeah.
If you are just joining us for the first time, we constantly talk about the pivot, how we may be going one direction in our lives, and we like to flip.
Oh, I thought you were going to say we
flip
always
the script, and we always make friends references. So those are two little tidbits if you've never listened to the show. So and if you're a newbie, thank you and welcome. Welcome. So, because of Soledad, we only have time for like one broad topic.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a doozy, but I didn't want it to pass up. So I saw something in the news this week, and I wanted to know, Jackie, what you thought. And then, of course, we want our listeners to chime in. This is California focused, so I apologize if you are in another state, but this could be coming to you. So, should California give teachers a tax break to help recruit and retain future educators? So there is a new bill that is being introduced under Senate Bill 807, which is allowing teachers to be exempt from paying state income tax after 5 years in the classroom. Do you have a thought about that?
Now, who's behind that bill?
Oh, geez. This bill was introduced by a Democratic Senator Henry Stern of Los Angeles and Kathleen Gagliani of Stockton, and is sponsored by Ed Voice, which is a nonprofit advocating for education reform agency. And the goal of it is aimed at retaining teachers for long-term process that I don't know. They've been forced to hire thousands of teachers who aren't fully credentialed because people are moving so quickly through their field because they're not getting paid enough.
Right.
So, do you have a thought about that?
Do I have a thought? Well, even if I had a thought the other way, I was raised by a teacher. Mm-hmm. I have a sister who's a teacher. My BFF over there in Massachusetts is a teacher. So, I mean, while I never went into that field, much to the chagrin of my father, I see the sacrifice. I see I mean, I'm trying to think of another field in this world that you put so much effort and so much of yourself and so much of your own money at times where there isn't an ultimate payoff. For example, like doctors, right? I mean, they're doing some pretty amazing things. But ultimately, if you're taking the right path or whatever, and money is your end game, the money's there, So no matter how long you're a teacher, it's only going to go so far. So I think that unfortunately we've lost, over the past 20 years, lost a lot of incredible teachers to other fields because of financial, you can't, it's very difficult to support a family on a teacher's salary, and so I think if this is going to be an incentive for those teachers to stay in, I don't think it's enough incentive to keep bad teachers in,
right?
Because it's not like you're suddenly raking in the dough. It's state taxes. We're not talking about federal income taxes. We're talking about state. I think with all the tax cuts and the breaks that wealthy people get and businesses get, why would we not send teachers the message that, they are important to us and give them these incentives? Kim Goldman, go.
I don't disagree with the incentivizing and I don't know. I'm going to take that back. I don't disagree that we don't honor the job that teachers have and the role that they play. I'm struggling with the fact that is a group that is being targeted to, like, I do pretty amazing work and I have pretty amazing impact. How come I don't get to not pay state income tax? And the fire department. I'm going to say
this with all due respect. Yeah. You make a bleep ton more than a teacher. Not a tremendous.
We don't know that. We don't know that.
Well, many directors of nonprofits, I would say as a whole, I do not know your salary.
Okay.
Nor am I revealing on the air.
Yeah, that's like, you don't know that. Yeah.
No, but if you look up director of a nonprofit salary versus one of a teacher, there is a maybe not a bleep ton.
Differ. Yeah, I beg to differ.
Okay.
Having said that, though, I think
she
that
called me out, baby.
I did, because that's not accurate. I just feel like there are a lot of fields that I was with you when you were like the sacrifice and all that stuff, but then when you said they use their own money, I get that. Teachers use their own money. I use my own money in my job because I don't get paid enough and my company can't reimburse me. I get it. A lot of people do that. But I just feel like it's a slippery slope, because why wouldn't other fields be entitled to have that?
Like what?
Law enforcement, fire departments, people that go.
Law enforcement, again, they have overtime. They have, and again, they're equally.
But they're putting themselves in harm's way to protect us. And they're putting their life on the line, not just paying for crayons.
And I'm not saying you're ever compensated for being killed on the job. Like,
right.
Don't write the emails or tweet at me.
Right.
Like law enforcement, super important. I would go as far to say, like, look at our first responders. Look at the paramedics.
Yeah.
They're being paid like they work at McDonald's.
Right.
If that.
Right.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
I guess listen, I am not, because I don't want the emails either. I am not saying that teachers are not important. I've always said that. I feel like there are other ways. I mean, if you look at what's happening with our budgets right now, where we're spending money, and there are other ways that we could look to our leadership. I mean, they're looking to take money out of our educational system.
All right, how about this?
So let me just finish. Hold on. I feel like that doesn't, I don't know that, like you said, and this is where I was going to say, I agree with you. I don't think that it incentivizes people enough. I don't think that the not paying state income tax would incentivize people enough to stay in that role, because they're already not getting paid a lot to begin with. And there is such a great sacrifice and yada, yada, that I'm yada yadaing over the best part, that I don't think that the impact on the other end of it is worth that. And I just think there are other ways. I think that there are other ways that we could be creative. I think it sends a message to other people that their jobs are not as. I just feel like it just opens up I just think there are other ways that we could be more creative with how we incentivize and how we honor and pay. I've always said that you never see teachers on the list of like the most courageous people in the world. Like you never.
Well, and they are first responders,
right? And so hear me. I totally am agreeing with that. I just don't think that this is the best way to honor
maybe
that.
Some tax credits, or maybe some, I don't know, something, when we used to, I don't know, when George Bush, I was too young, so, I may sound stupid, or maybe that's just my excuse. But when Bush was president, I remember there were a couple times, like, we got checks in the mail, so we would spend our money on, like, help the economy. Maybe we should be giving teachers some of these like, hey, you spend money on,
Yeah, and that's it'll be interesting to see what happens with this.
But we do want to hear what you guys think. So find us over on Twitter at Broadscast, same as Facebook and Instagram. And let us know. And also, we're going to come back in just a minute with Soledad O'Brien, but we want to let you know about a little way you can sponsor the show at Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/broadscast. If you feel like it, head over there. We have some cool incentives to support the show.
You can come host with us.
We're not teachers, but your help can helps the show stay on the air and do the things. Do the things that we want to do. Right?
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's do it. All right. So when we come back, we are going to be on the line with Soledad O'Brien.
Stay tuned.
Subscribe to Broadscast on iTunes.
What does being a broad mean to you?
A broad tells it like it is. Doesn't take no for an answer.
She exudes confidence.
A warrior princess of the urban jungle.
Being a broad is being diverse.
Strong enough to do things on your own, but smart enough to know when to ask for help.
We succeed. We get right to the top.
Being a broad is 10% of what happens to you and 90% how you deal with it.
Broadscast, where every broad's voice matters.
And we are back. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Jackie.
So every time we do the show, we have our guests call in, and then we're all like, hey, seamless. But today we're going to call Soledad.
Oh.
So I'm getting her on the line. I'm getting her on the horn.
Oh, so I hope this isn't awkward.
Soledad's on.
Hi, this is Jackie and Kim from Broadscast for
Hey,
Soledad.
How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
Excellent.
Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Sure. That was easy. We got you on the line.
Got you on. That was fast, yeah.
So
just my cell phone, all very easy.
Oh, that is super easy. So as we set you up earlier, and the whole world already knows, you're an award-winning journalist, speaker, author, and why can I not say the word philanthropist?
Yeah.
Who anchors and produces the Hearst Television.
It does not roll off the tongue.
Matter of fact, with Soledad O'Brien. Soledad, yay, you're on.
Hey.
So
how are you guys?
Kim and I were just talking this morning about how if we brought you on the show and just talked about your childhood, we could fill an hour.
Yeah.
So, I mean, were you like meant to be a success or what? I mean, when I went back and was looking at your bio, so both of your parents are immigrants. Your dad,
my mom's Cuban, my dad's Australian. Mm-hmm.
And they both met over here. And then I was reading that they had to go to Washington, D.C. to get married because interracial was not legal in Maryland at the time.
Yeah, exactly. But, I have to tell you this seriously. I do think I was well positioned for success. I had 5 brothers and sisters as well. And really what led me into philanthropy was recognizing the thing that positioned success was actually having 2 parents who valued education for me. And so often when I look at the young women that we help with our foundation, you really see, I mean, if you don't have people who are obsessed with helping you navigate education, who have high expectations around education, and who really, we were very lucky. We didn't have a lot of ups and downs in terms of, I mean, for a lot of the young women we help, someone loses a job, someone has a medical emergency, something terrible happens. Maybe a parent leaves the family. Like all those, we had none of that. So yeah, I do think I was well positioned to do well, but only because we had a lot of good luck on that front. And I think that these are the kinds of things that you have to recognize when other people lack them, that they're actually positioned to struggle. So, things that were kind of just lucky for me, to be honest. I mean, I was a hard worker in school, all that stuff. But really the things that really helped me was having 2 parents who valued education and having nothing, chaotic or particularly traumatic happen in my childhood. That will set you on a good path.
Did you? Hi, Soledad, it's Kim. So I question this. Jackie and I both have kids, and I am constantly looking at how other kids learn in school. My kid is not a lover of learning. Like, he's a straight A student, and blah, 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 but he doesn't love, yada, yada. What keeps saying this?
Kim likes to blah, blah the important.
Because I don't want to, I mean, he's a good student.
Well, I get it. Listen, but what you need to do is have more kids, because you have one or more than one.
I just have one.
I have 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have 4. And what I found was that you sort of, as you have more, you recognize that actually everybody comes into this world their own way in dealing with education. Some people get it quickly and they're really aggressive and ambitious and love learning and love reading. Others really, really struggle. Others, all 4 of my kids are really different in how they think about learning. I have one daughter for whom everything comes easy. She's really actually somewhat annoying. She reminds me a lot of her dad, because he was one of those people who look at you and say, so croquet, do you play it like this and then automatically win?
Oh, right.
Like, yeah, I've been working at this for a long time. And then I have another daughter who's got really high EQ, but struggles sometimes, before she went off to a different school academically, where they had a different vision of how kids should learn. I have a son who's deaf, and so he literally misses, full 50% of what's being said every day. Super bright kid, but just not hearing. And then his twin brother, really, really bright kid who is lazy as all get out. And so we've had to kind of figure out, how do you deal with every child differently and inspire them to think something is cool and want to love learning? Because for me, like you, I'm glad when someone gets good grades. I'm bummed when they don't do well, but it really is not about the grades for me. It's like, do you love to learn? Because that's what's going to save you.
Absolutely. And you just mentioned, finding the right school. And I think it's, with my 3 kids, all totally different in their challenges and successes. And, finding that, Kim's son, while he may not be expressive in his love for learning, I'm not his mother, but I think it's there. Kim's making faces at me right now.
He's the kid that if he gets the study guide and it says, I have to study, A through B, he will only study A through B and will completely ignore the rest of the page. Like his vocabulary test, he only learns how to. Yeah, and I'm frustrated by that for him. But, speaking of education.
It should be, because at the end of the day, what's going to make a kid successful, I think, and what really would judge in the real world today, right, is connecting the dots. It's not about knowing the answer. And so I have kids like that too, right, who are happy to memorize the 10 things they need, and they're very good at regurgitating. That's actually the kind of student I was. I was really good at memorizing and then spitting it out. And what you really need today is to say, how do you come up with ideas? How do you collaborate? How do you take all the problems and figure out a solution, as opposed to me telling you how to get to the solution? So it's a different world. So I understand your frustration, and I think you do have to figure out, how do you make kids love the idea of solving problems? Maybe not even love learning, but love the idea of solving problems.
That's how I was.
My son Charlie is really into science, and yet when it came to actually working at it, he didn't really like the stuff he was doing in school. We put him in a class this year. We gave him an engineering class for Christmas, which sounds terrible, but he loves it. And he's loved it. But, I came in one day, a young woman teaches it, comes to the house, which logistically just helps a lot when you have a lot of kids. And they're making a bridge out of dry spaghetti and gumdrops and talking about how much pressure it was amazing. And I was like, this kid now loves engineering and doesn't really know he's learning engineering.
Right.
He loves building stuff. And so I think if you're lucky enough to be able to say, let's try different classes, let's expose you to different things, that I think can really help a kid. If they're interested, they'll go the extra mile to learn something.
So Jackie hates when I go out of order on things. But I have a question. So you come from news background. So, and I know you've transitioned into Starfish Media, where you're doing more documentary style and social justice projects. So, but I want to move to politics for 1 second. So with Betsy DeVos, the Department of Education chair, like how much did you pay attention to what she stood for in the hearings and her being appointed, with the education background that you have and what's so important to you and your foundation with Powerful Foundation? Like how engaged in that discussion are you, or were you paying attention?
Yeah, I was disappointed in how she came across, certainly in the conversations that she was having with her when she was being grilled by the committee. But I guess I knew it was going to be a done deal because just the structure now, we know that, sort of different people nominated will get through pretty easily, no matter what they say. She clearly showed herself not to know some really important things about education. I think that was very, very disappointing. As a person who went through public education, my mom was a public school teacher. I obviously root for kids who are in public education. All of our scholars are through public education. So yeah, I think it's disappointing. I'm hopeful that as she actually gets her feet on the ground and really meets with people who know what they're doing, she'll maybe learn something.
Yeah, it's tough to watch, some of those confirmation hearings.
I guess part of it was that, she there was, now that I'm paying attention because my kid's in the process, in the system, they talk a lot about giving choice. And when you just said that you have 4 different kids that learn a very different way, I guess that struck a chord with me because I'm thinking that, there are a lot of people. I mean, Jackie, your kids are in the same boat. Each of your kids learn a very different way. So is there something to be said for giving people a lot of choice in their education, or does that choice deplete one to give to the other? And I don't know. I guess that's where I was sort of...
I think both can be true, right? I mean, those are not mutually exclusive things. Right. So there is no question if you remove students from a public school system, you deplete the system. The system, in some ways, like insurance, right, requires that you have a lot of people in. If you start removing people and just leave behind people whose parents can't navigate something better, that's problematic, right? So one reason I went to a really good public school was that actually people whose parents were wealthy, people whose parents were middle class, people whose parents were lower middle class, and people whose parents were out and out poor, all were in the same school. And it actually helped the school to be better. So people whose parents also were very good at navigating education actually were helping everybody else because they, if you didn't have parents to help you at all, or you had parents who had never navigated a school system, you would still be helped by other people who did know how to navigate it because they were making changes, positive changes in the school. So I think you can have both things be true. If you have a system where you siphon out all the students who are doing well, or have parents who can navigate on their behalf, and leave behind people who can't figure out the system and can't navigate their way out, that's a problem. At the same time, listen, my kids have choice. I have choice. Why shouldn't everybody have a lot of choice? And shouldn't the choice be to have really great public schools as opposed to a choice be between some bad options? So those things, I think, are not mutually exclusive, and I do think it's problematic when people who have a heck of a lot of choice, like they can pack up and just take their kids somewhere, dictate to other people, no, you shouldn't have choice. I think that's a big problem.
That's such a great point. I mean, my kids are all at a charter school, and so, we did leave our neighborhood public school and try this because it seemed like a better fit educationally for the way they learn and what we were looking for as a family. But, what a privilege that, I mean, the charter school is open to the public. Anybody can apply and there's a public lottery and the whole thing. But, how privileged are we that we are able to look at these options and not just have them at the neighborhood school because, we're working 4 jobs or, we don't know that there are other options. So I think...
And knowing to apply is not a small thing, right? And then doing the application process is not nothing. And then navigating it and following up and going in for the interview and, all those things. Sure, it's open to all, but it actually requires some ability to get through it. And so you can imagine that for certain kids, that's just not going to be in the cards for them. They don't have someone who can navigate it, as opposed to public school where you have to show up or your parents will get arrested.
Right.
Period.
And it's up the street.
So yeah, there's opportunity in that. It's not a small thing.
I find that some of the parents don't even have email. It's like that we take for granted all these things. Like we have our computer and we can fill out the and God forbid we have to actually fill it out by printing it and writing and then scanning or whatever because what a pain in the butt. When there are people who don't even have access to that.
Right.
Right. No, and nowadays, as you know, I mean, if you're trying to get a job, you have to have a phone. You have to be able to log in online and check your responses. So that requires you to be online. If your kid wants to be able to do their homework, I hope you have broadband. Better have Wi-Fi at home. Oh, yeah. You don't? Okay. Well, just know that almost every assignment they're going to get in a decent school is going to require that they are able to work online. Now, some people are able to work around it. You can go to school early. I've interviewed many kids who say, listen, I used to either stay at school late and finish my homework. I'd go to school early and finish my homework, start my homework, or finish my homework. But, okay, that assumes someone can drive you there. Maybe you would, all of these things are not necessarily easily built in, I guess is what I'm saying. And so it is challenging for people who are in deep poverty, for whom the only way to get out of that poverty is really going to be a good education that helps them get a better job and a better opportunity.
Right.
If you're really, really poor and you don't have Wi-Fi, you're already 3 steps behind my kids, at least.
Absolutely. And that's, that's the job right now, is to figure out how to not leave those kids behind and to give them the leg up. Because, your parents coming from, being immigrants, coming here and becoming educators, that alone is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
Huge, right? So they very much, my mom left Cuba, so she used to always say, listen, the thing about education is no one can take it from you. If you ever have to flee your country, imagine her perspective, if you ever have to flee your country, at least you have your education. And that's a very true point. But even just being able to navigate, college, we had great college counselors. There's a lot of schools where they don't have college counselors, or they have one for, 600, 700 students.
Right.
We had great college counselors, and then I had all my siblings went to college, good colleges ahead of me. So when it came time and my parents all had advanced degrees. My mom has her master's, my dad has a PhD. They know how to navigate college. So think of the leg up that I had as a student just because someone knew how to do it. Those are not small things. And sometimes when I look at the scholarship students that we have, the biggest problem they have is if something goes wrong, they don't know what to do. So they sort of do nothing. Yeah. For example, we've had students who have a $400 bill, that they haven't paid. And they just don't know what to do. There's no money. So what happens? It goes into default. And guess what? The next semester, they cannot come back because now their account's in default. In my family, when I did that exact thing, I overspent on my phone bill, $400. I thought my father's head was going to pop off his body. He was so mad. He was so mad. Oh, my goodness. So mad. But you know what? He wrote a check and paid it and yelled at me for days. But I absolutely had a safety net. There was never a moment of questions. I wasn't going to go back to Harvard because I owed $400. We have lots of scholars for whom we pay a few $100s there, a few $100 here, $1,000. Because otherwise, they're not going to school.
Right.
It's pretty stunning when you think about it.
And $400 could mean
the
difference between, that next step could lead them to exactly where they need to be and making a huge impact. But if they don't have it, they don't really have that opportunity.
100%. And it's sometimes, we have one of our scholars, a young woman who actually, she was a victim of domestic violence. Her mom left her dad, and she was in a parochial school. And they would never give her transcript because her mom was not able to pay the final bill. Did very well in school. I think it was something like $1,300 that I paid to get her transcript. She was 27 by the time she got her transcript.
Wow.
27.
All because of a couple bucks.
Yeah, and think about it. Right, exactly. Now she is Dean Bliss, biology major, working full-time at one of those walk-in clinics, and also thinking about going to medical school. But imagine, for $1,300, she just wasn't going to go. So we have to figure out how you really solve this problem because poverty is a very real obstacle. And even when things are made easier, poverty, you blow a tire on your car, boom, you're not going to class. So there's so few vets, there's for your kids will get a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance, For me, my kids will get a first, second, and third chance, but for kids in poverty, they don't get a second chance, period.
So, you're bringing up so many topics that are obviously so popular right now, hot topics in our news media and with the politics, with cutting some of these programs that will impact lower income, poverty stricken, elderly, education, all the things that you're talking about with people being able to get second chances and some of the social programs that help people in those particular situations. Do you miss being part of mainstream media right now in that regard?
God, no. No, it's so ugly. So, I feel like we do these stories but we don't do them. And I still do a ton of reporting,
right,
but I don't do them for the daily chaotic news cycle, which I actually have found a little challenging. Because certainly in a lot of cable channels, it's just a lot of yelling. I mean, I really don't know that there's a value add of people screaming at each other. I love doing stories. I like camping out and actually showing the complex nature. For example, we did a story, documentary, which included the story of a young woman named Gloria Menefee, a student trying to get into college in poverty. And the principal of her school, a guy named Dr. Perry, was telling me that one of the things that he was getting was a lot of pushback because a lot of his students who are in poverty, mostly of color, would do very poorly on the SAT. And so he would say, listen, there's a whole bunch of reasons my students do poorly on the SAT. Sometimes just the questions on the SAT, both is to yacht, as, and the kids are like, what the hell is a yacht?
Right.
So he opened a charter school, a magnet school rather, in a community college. And so the students from 9th grade on start taking college classes. And so one of his solutions was when someone said, well, how do we know if your kids will do well in college? Because that's what the SAT is measuring. And he would say, well, they do because here's the college transcript. They took a college-level biology class. They took a college-level math class. And so I love the idea of, working around the problem by just having another solution. And so 100% of his students get into 4-year colleges.
Wow.
Because he kind of was able to answer that question without, it was simple, but genius, but simple.
Right.
And you can't tell that story in two people screaming at each other on the set. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it's a story that's apolitical. It's really about what kind of things work to both help kids get into college and help them be successful and not cost a gajillion dollars that would bankrupt a state or a federal government or a city. And so I don't know that on daily news that we do a very good job of digging into the issues. We tend to tell those stories. We have a great partnership with PBS NewsHour. So if we have an opportunity to tell those stories in long form, in 10, 12 minutes, and the work that I do on HBO Real Sports, those pieces will run 10, 12, 16 minutes.
Right.
And I think that's the kind of time you need to get into the complexity of a story. It's just not like, well, you're an idiot. No, you're a bigger idiot.
And then it's all about sound bites. I mean, does that contribute to why, you had reached such great levels of success with NBC and CNN, and you were hosting your own, shows over both of those networks. Is that part of the reason why you left, was because you didn't feel
No,
like...
not really. I started doing documentaries, so I guess in some ways it was because I just saw a different way you could do it, and I liked it better. I liked the storytelling opportunity. Listen, they just changed. When I left CNN, they just wanted to go a different direction on that morning show, and that direction was more of a, we gather people, we kind of, much more aggressive panels yelling. It just was not what I was going to do. But when we started Matter of Fact, we actually had another opportunity. We could do a yelling show. And we don't. We actually made our segments much longer. Now they're 6 minutes, which is significantly longer than most interviewed segments. And then, our executive producer calls it the teaching hospital of news, meaning our goal is to sit down and educate people about issues. So we'll talk about gerrymandering and explain what does it work, what does it mean, what does it work, what's before the Supreme Court now or what could be, and what are courts really deciding on. And so it's not, oh my gosh, good morning, this is what happened in the last 12 hours. Or, oh my goodness, the president has tweeted again, here's what it means.
Right.
It's really, here's an issue that you need to know. A budget has been put forth around health care. Here are the people who are going to be affected. Let's sit down and walk through this budget calmly with somebody who has a stake in it. This week we're looking at self-employed people to talk about what are some of the provisions in this budget that they like and that they hate. And I think that that's actually a helpful conversation.
I think that news, is missing the news media is missing a huge opportunity that I think that you're kind of aware of, is that there's an education here. There's, I can't turn on any of the news networks with my kids, first of all, because I have no idea what they're going to say, that I'm going to and they're yelling at each other, and you're right, and they're talking in sound bites, and they give them 2.5 minutes, and everybody wants to have that last word. And so it's chaotic. And I feel
it's about being sassy, right? More than, it's like being sassy rather than explain something. I think.
Well, because you're trying to get. I mean, I know, having done media, that I now have to speak in terms of sound bites, because I know that I'm going to get edited down or I'm going to get talked over, and so I'm crafting my sentence so that I can get it in 140 characters or less, basically. Otherwise, I'm not going to get my.
It's like on-air Twitter.
Yeah.
But I think
Exactly true.
But I think that what's important, though, is that you're educating. So when I watch these other networks, it's so inside baseball. Like if they're talking about, something with the Supreme Court or education or immigration reform or anything, it's like they're coming in halfway through the story. So like if I wasn't necessarily watching for the 12 hours prior or the last 4 days, like I don't necessarily know what they're talking about, and I can't, as a citizen, as a human being, can't be informed and make choices and go out there in the world. So what we see is people in social media regurgitating what they heard in sound bites and using it as their platform.
Yep. 100% agree. I mean, again, it's supposed to be, remember, media was supposed to be about teaching people and educating people. One project we're working on, which we're really excited about, which I think will help with, or I'm hoping will help with the polarization of what's happening today, is we're working on a project called What Works, and just literally going into communities to find out the things that they're doing that work and that are scalable. Just what works.
Wow.
And so it's not political. It is just, but I mean, at the end of the day, in my community at least, both where I live and on the weekends, I just want the potholes paved, right? I don't have these intense political, polarized, partisan discussions. It's just who's making it happen. So we're looking at these communities where they've actually done a lot of data collection where we can measure and then scale the stuff that's working. And so we're very excited about what's working as a project, because I think it's going to be good for everybody.
I just, it's interesting that you use that example of the potholes, right? So, if I were to bring that up in our neighborhood, they'd say, oh, well, it's the Democrats that don't want to pay for the blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? And everything. And I'm so exhausted by, I get attacked on Twitter a lot for having an opinion that really isn't so much an opinion as like a question about ethics or a question about being honest. And well, you're just a liberal. I'm like, no, I'm just a human. I'm a human first that has an expectation about the culture I want to live in. And then I get accused of something political. Like, do you think that we're able?
We don't measure. I think we got to measure. I mean, to me, what really makes those stories work is instead of the pothole being, this group of people want this group of, what I want is data. Right? What I really want to know is that filling a pothole costs $100. And so find someone who said, well, we don't have a lot of money, but we've managed to fill our potholes, and this is what we did. What we decided to do was to take a bunch of people who had, let's say, been given short-term jail sentences, and instead of making them finish their jail sentences, we said we would free them if they would help us fill the potholes, because it needed to be done. And so blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, it's a win. And it has to be measurable, and it has to be data-based. Because at the end of the day, you would say, it's really not about, are you a liberal, are you a Republican, are you an independent, are you voting? You just say, here's something that made the community run better. Someone came up with a good idea. Let's run with it. And what's more, for me, how does San Diego take that information? How does San Antonio take that information? Want me to give you a good example? It happened in Kansas, town in Kansas. So the town in Kansas found that they were paying something like 250 people who they were spending $90,000 a year on in a county in Kansas, $90,000 a year on per person, because these are people who are overusing the jail system, the county jail, and the ER. And so they were very expensive, $90,000 per person for people who are basically looping in and out of jail. So what they did was they started tracking them, really measuring every single thing about these people. And what they found was that sometimes they'd be drunk and disorderly, and they'd go into the jail system, which meant 4 days in jail, which, by the way, is expensive.
Right.
So they decided that those folks, they started measuring it. People who were just drunk and disorderly basically now just went to a facility. They built a facility, and they would sleep it off. The next morning, they would get up, and they would walk out. Never went into jail. Then they had realized that some of the people that they were stopping and bringing to jail actually had mental disorders. They shouldn't be in jail.
Right.
And so they actually brought them to this facility, and the facility shunted them into these mental health sort of programs that already existed in the county. So those people never went into jail. That saved a ton of money in the jail. Then they found that there were people who were actually looping through the ER, and they shouldn't be, because the police had no alternative but to bring them to the ER if they had been injured, and even with a minor injury. That meant your police officer had to sit with them in the ER for 8 hours while they were waiting to be seen. They took those people out. They brought those into, and you put a healthcare worker in this facility. So the police could now drop someone off, 15 minutes later be back on their beat. I mean, win-win-win. It's not political. It's just good, right? People would all say people who are mentally ill should get mental health care services. People who are drunk and disorderly should not be looped into a very expensive jail system. And people who have minor injuries should absolutely get to see a nurse, have those injuries taken care of, but we shouldn't spend the money and burden the ER system and the police department taking care of someone with a minor injury who needs basically some, betadine and, and a Band-Aid.
But where do you think it went awry, though?
End up saving $250,000. Say it again?
Oh, wow.
But where do you think it went awry that people can't see that for what that is? I feel like...
Well, I think some ways politicians have jumped on that, right? I mean, and media jumps on that. I remember when I started seeing, because I was working at CNN at the time, where politicians, instead of going to work out an issue behind the scenes, they would come to the cameras to talk. But there was a day when the politicians would actually go sit in the back room, and they got along. It was just less partisan. They actually dealt with each other. And I remember seeing it was years ago, maybe 10 years ago, where people would just come to the CNN cameras before they would even, and sometimes they'd even skip the vote or skip the session just come because they had to raise money all the time. Yeah. They were always in running mode and not in, legislating mode. If you're a congressman, you're being elected every 2 years, you better spend a whole bunch of time trying to raise money. And that means you become very beholden to people who are going to give you money.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because
it's a combination of a lot of things.
But across the country, the last couple of weeks with all of these, elected officials that were skipping out on their town halls and their roundtables with their constituents, that sends a message, and there's it's so chaotic right now, and it's not about the people. And so when you, Soledad, are telling these stories, and shedding light on things that are so common sense, it must be frustrating for you to feel like.
Keep in mind, none of those stories that I'm talking about get coverage.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. It must be so frustrating for you to not get coverage for that stuff.
Yeah, so imagine truly how they feel, right? They've worked on something that just saved $250,000 for their community every year, right? Win-win-win, and no one thinks it's sexy enough to cover because they're not screaming at their colleagues across the aisle.
Right. And it all
so
it
that's
goes
our
back
goal
to the media.
What works.
Yeah,
it really does. And so with what works, our goal is to say, listen, we do have a role to play, and we can elevate people. And again, not elevate them around. Here is something that was done, that was measured, that can be scaled, can be replicated. They can give their data to another community. This can save a community money. Here's what worked. They even track what things are not working. So to me, being able to say to somebody, we're going to do this story, and we're going to show people that actually lots of stuff does work. Lots of stuff does work. It doesn't have to be partisan all the time. Mm-hmm. So that, to me, I think is going to be a real win for us.
Maybe we just put them in a room that has cameras because, my idea would be to put these politicians, kind of deal with it the way I deal with my kids. When they are arguing over which movie we're watching on family movie night, I literally say, you three go, come back when you've agreed on something. And they have to figure it out.
Or no one gets to watch anything.
Yeah.
Right? Or no TV tonight.
Exactly.
I'm going to let you solve this.
Exactly. And sometimes they'll be back in 5 minutes. Sometimes they'll be back in 20 minutes. And sometimes I find them playing a board game because they couldn't come to an agreement. And it's just as good,
right.
So there are ways, conflict resolution. You go back to what you were talking about in education and how it's not about memorizing, regurgitating, all of that, but it's, conflict resolution. It's critical thinking. It's problem solving.
But remember, you're being tested on memorizing. Like when my kids have a test, often, I'll tell them all these, here's how you think about it. And they're like, really, what I need to know, I just need to memorize these 5 because I'm going to be tested on memorizing these 5. And they're not wrong. Right? So that is the challenge. You're highlighting what I agree. It's like, how do you ask them to play this game when the game they're going to be measured on is this game over here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why, and it sounds like you're similar with the kids. It's not, for me, it's not whether my kids come home with all A's because they don't. but if you got a C, if you got a B, if you got an A, is it because you worked really hard, or is it because it came easily? So I want to teach them how that work ethic and that ability to problem solve and to come up with find answers that you don't have is much more important in life. Those are bigger skills.
I completely agree. And I think it's actually the growth mindset, which I'm sure you guys have talked a lot about. The idea that your mind is a muscle.
Yeah.
And no more would we think if you gave someone a 100-pound weight to pick up and they couldn't, they would, you'd say, okay, well, now you need to start working up to it. Start with 15 pounds and they'll build. We don't think of our minds that way. I think we often think of like either you're smart or you're not. Either you can lift that 100 pounds or you can't. Well, that's obviously not true. You can if you work at it. The mind's a muscle. The more you work, people who are perceived to be smart in math actually just do math a lot. And, and can just do and do and do, and that will actually overcome a lot of barriers. So what we've worked on is really getting our kids to stop thinking about, is someone smart or not smart? I'm like, listen, I'm really smart in things, except if I were to go to a foreign country where I don't speak the language, do I suddenly become dumb because I can't get around? I can't order in a restaurant. Am I now dumb? Of course not. So that's, and that's really helped with our kids, having them not think in terms of smart, but thinking in terms of, I just haven't learned it yet. What are the strategies to figuring it out?
Well, we don't place. I don't know. I remember when my ex-husband and I were married, and we had an argument when I was pregnant where he wanted our kid to just be the smartest kid in the class, and I'm like, I just want my kid to be the honest. Like, I want my kid to be kind. And it was of course I want my son to be smart, but I wanted him to be kind and honest and civic minded and all those other things that make us good humans, because the education's going to come or it's not, or he's going to,
right.
But I don't know. I think we.
Well, listen, I think for me, it's about, we have an opportunity because we can expose our kids to more, For example, part of the reason that you don't have to really worry so much about did my kid get an A or a B is because I know that I'm going to be able to give them good opportunities.
Right.
I mean, I remember my parents taking us to the Louvre museum in France, and my mom being like, "You will enjoy this. You will love it." And so think about it, like the luxury of being bored and rolling your eyes and being like, "Oh, I don't want to be here." I mean, and then of course years later, when I'm in college and I'm looking around and everybody has been to the Louvre and they're all talking about their experiences, I have something to add. I don't feel like I don't belong,
right?
Because I've had this experience. My parents exposed us to a lot of stuff, even kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
And so I think where we have a luxury is that we can expose our children. Yes, it's okay to get a B because if you want to be a lawyer, I can have you intern in your cousin's office. I can, send you on a trip where you get to do this. I can make sure you get that exposure. Again, kids in poverty, they just don't necessarily have a lot of access to get a lot of exposure. And so, again, for our foundation, some of it is just that, like seeing, this is what a lawyer does. Could this be something you want to do? For a lot of my students, their parents have never worked a 9-to-5 job. They don't know. They don't know the rules of showing up at an office. Right. They don't know this is what you wear and this is how you do it. Imagine. I mean, even my kids who now at their school, they have to shake someone's hand every morning. They've had to do it since they were in pre-K.
Yeah.
Now when they meet a stranger, they walk up and shake hands and introduce themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And I look at them and think, this puts them 2 steps ahead of someone else who's just never had to do that.
Right.
And feels like they don't know what to do. So it's not that they're smarter or better. It's just
what they were
that they got an
exposed to.
opportunity and exposure, and another kid did not. And so, we try to close that gap with our scholars and make sure that they're getting exposed all the time.
Well, I think, the Powerful Foundation, I mean, you are taking some of these opportunities that your own children have and giving giving others at least a taste of it, or exposing them to it. And so that they can kind of, I think exposure is number one, like you were saying.
You're also putting value and on people, and that sometimes is just what people need to get themselves to the next level, is knowing that somebody has belief in them and that someone else sees value in them. And I work and I know you have to go, Soledad, so we're going to be mindful of your time. I think we have like a minute left, but Jackie and I are both very committed to education and nonprofit stuff. And when you say something different to somebody and it can change the trajectory of their life, tenfold. So I love what you're doing with your foundation and your matter of fact. I was looking through all the guests that you've had on your program, and it's just...
Yeah, it's been great. It's been really, I feel very lucky. And, I think if you feel like, hey, life has been pretty good and I feel very lucky, you sort of are beholden on, bringing other people through and giving other people an opportunity. So, yeah, I appreciate that. We'll bring Powerful to LA again this year, and I will invite you to come and just hang out and meet some of our young women.
Oh, we would love that.
And sometimes they just don't know their power.
Yeah.
They don't understand. Like, gosh, you can do it. I know you haven't necessarily seen a lot of that in your life, but, you definitely can. It's a great message to send to someone.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Soledad, for your time and for spending
the
day with us.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to catch up with you. You bet. My pleasure.
And, if you can reach Soledad, obviously, on her show, matter of fact, but also Powerful Foundation and all of the other links, Starfish
and
Media.
Twitter. I'm always on Twitter.
And Twitter.
And Twitter. You're very active. I love it. Yeah.
We'll have all of the links on our website, broadscast.com as well.
I'd love that. Thanks again for having me. What a pleasure
Soledad.
to catch up with you guys.
Have a wonderful day.
Take care.
See you later. Bye-bye.
You too.
Oh, she's just awesome, and she's like gorgeous.
But you know what? But a part of it's just it's easy. What she's talking about, it's easy. In the sense of just placing value, changing the conversation, opening the dialogue. It's not hard to do those things. I
think growing up with the education and with her parents stressing so much on education, it's like she was exposed to her stuff as a child and growing up and being the daughter of immigrants. And so she's, not necessarily stuff she learned from a book, but stuff she learned from her life.
Yeah.
And you just totally nailed it. Like, it's easy because it's her experience. Mm-hmm. It's not like she went to Harvard, but it's not like she went to Harvard and learned about all of this other stuff and now is teaching it.
Right.
And I think that that's something that, I celebrate and we celebrate more and more in women are taking your challenges and your struggles and your experience and using it for your work.
But also, it doesn't, she was said I had a pretty easy childhood, but it's also recognizing that she was given an opportunity to share, and to give back and it doesn't always have to come from, such a troubled background that you want to not have someone else feel the same pain you did. She's like, I had pretty great,
right?
And she's like, and I want others to experience what that could be like, she doesn't take for granted what her background is. She's merging her success and her ability to talk and communicate and raise money and tell stories in ways that are impactful. And we need more of that.
But do you think that, and we don't have her on, so she can't answer for herself, but, I see people who, if you look on paper, had a pretty great childhood, did not have many struggles, did not have any loss, did not have, and they still use their lives or they use it as excuses. So whether you had, tremendous difficulty or you feel like you were pretty fortunate, I think is a perception in some ways. Because I think there are people, like if we actually dug and unfolded and uncovered, I'm sure she had, like we all do, things in her childhood that were challenging.
Right.
You know what I mean? But she just chooses not to use that as her story or to perpetuate that story because she sees how lucky she is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
totally.
I feel like gratitude, and that's where I know roll your eyes.
I'm
but
not rolling my eyes.
I feel like gratitude is first and foremost. And that's what I try to teach my kids. I bring back that flat tire I talked about that I got a couple of weeks ago. And it was like, we got a flat tire right across the street from the junior high. We could have been on the freeway. We could have been in the middle of an intersection. We could have been in danger. We could have not had access to OnStar, or my husband couldn't have left work to help me out. Or, there were so many things that I think people will focus on that flat tire. Most of us are in such a place of, we're lucky. We're just fortunate. We're fortunate human beings. And I think that Soledad, you can feel that with her, that she sees her life in that way and uses it to help elevate other people.
Well, use whatever word that Sorry, Jackie's making hand signals, and my brain.
30 seconds.
I know, but my brain doesn't work that way. I'm like, what are you doing? Okay, I don't have time to make my point, but I'm not going to make a point. Congratulations that you're grateful. P.S.
Well, that's it for today, guys. So head on over to Broadscast. And also, if you would be so kind and you like the show, head over to iTunes, please, and leave a review or a little rating.
And make it a high rating.
If you like it.
No, just make it a high rating.
But, we really appreciate your listening and hope you will join us next week. We'll be back. Thanks so much.
You are listening to Broadscast. For more from the Broads, head to broadscast.com.